Welcome back to Social Personality Unit 4. Last unit, we were talking about pro-social behavior. That is, being nice to others or doing something that will benefit others. And in this unit, Unit 4, we're talking about aggression, which is very different. Now, aggression has been studied by many people the world over, and not all of them agree. What I'm going to be presenting in this unit is my attempt to make a cohesive narrative, but I want you to be aware that this is not actually how things unfolded. It's quite common that you'll have people isolated in different places that are defining aggression and subsets of aggression in a different way. In fact, some review articles and meta-analyses have identified at least 12 dichotomies of how we can look at aggression. And some of these dichotomies overlap, some of them are just synonymous with one another, and some of them are completely different. And so there's no one way to study aggression. So we're just kind of going through and surveying what is happening in the aggression research landscape presently. And so we're going to break aggression down into a couple major components. The major components you can see here is physical aggression, social aggression, and then we'll be talking specifically about bullying, which is a specific type of repeated aggressive patterns. So let's jump right into physical aggression. Now, physical aggression can be defined in lots of ways. I like to look at the work by John Coy and Kenneth Dodge and framing aggression as intentional behavior that intends to cause harm or to threaten or intimidate harm towards a person or property or animals or something that exists out there. So it's actually harming them and having the intention to harm them, so not accidentally stumbling into someone, or raising your voice or gesturing in such a way that you are threatening to cause physical harm to a person or their property. And so that's really what we're looking at for physical aggression. We can be aggressive in lots of other ways, but for just looking at physical aggression, that's where we're going to limit it for this discussion. Now that might seem a little bit limited, but it's not. Just by defining physical aggression in that specific way, we can look at many different varieties. So let's jump to some of these subtypes. Some of these dichotomies are presented by different researchers and for different types of data sets, whether you're looking at kids or looking at adults or looking at criminals or looking at people in school. And so I'm attempting to show you how some of these dichotomies could work in combination with one another. But it's important to understand not all combinations may be especially relevant or possible. So we think about when someone is intending to cause harm or intending to threaten harm to another person. What is behind these intentions? Why did they intend to cause harm? Who started it? What were they trying to accomplish by intending harm? And why did they do it in the first place? So let's start off in terms of goal orientation. What I mean by goal orientation is if it was instrumental aggression or hostile aggression. So instrumental aggression is considered to be something that you're doing for a purpose. This is the idea that you are choosing to assault another person because you hope to gain something from it. Maybe you hope to gain attention. We see this in young children. They will fight for parental attention. Maybe you're hoping to get a reward or money. If you go and rob a bank, you're actually looking for a specific reward or earnings out of that altercation. Sometimes the instrumental aggression can be very premeditated and planned, and you're intentionally manipulating the situation to get something. You punch someone for their lunch money, let's say. You may have premeditated that and thought about it before you saw them in the hallway. This is very different than hostile aggression. Hostile aggression doesn't have that premeditation manipulation element. Instead, hostile aggression refers to someone who is dysregulated. They lost their temper. They can't control their emotions. We see this a lot in young children who are they're exhausted, they're overtired, they might be teething or feeling unwell, and they don't plan to get anything out of it. It's not about a goal. They just can't regulate their behavior because they're so exhausted. And so this is demonstrating more of a lack of coping. Versus in the instrumental, this may be a very well thought out, cold-blooded manipulation technique. Versus in hostile, it's not done in cold-blooded, it's done with tempers flaring. So that's the goal orientation component, dichotomy 1. In terms of dichotomy 2, we are talking about if the behavior has a target or not. There is always going to be something that gets hit, but was that a planned target, I guess I should say. So I'm going to use some pop culture references for this. If you think about a superhero that goes to attack the supervillain's lair, their lair is a specific target that they just want to destroy, or they want to attack the villain is their target, or vice versa. And so that would be a very targeted form of aggression. In comparison, you may have some people who they don't have a specific target in mind. where it's more of a response and a regulation issue. And this is just you're exploding and you don't actually intend to hurt any one thing, but it's just whatever gets in your way. I have the example of the Hulk. Hopefully you know that pop culture reference. It's the idea when he becomes very angry, he may not be just targeting the villains, he may be destroying anything in its path. So that'd be a targetless form of aggression. We do tend to find that the targetless tends to be more hostile and tends to be more reactive, which we'll describe in another one of our dichotomies. Now, we were just talking about heroes and villains, and that is an important third dichotomy. It's important to understand that you can have aggression on either side of the moral compass. And this would be referred to as antisocial or pro-social aggression. Now, so we just had a whole unit on pro-social. What does pro-social aggression mean? Well, it's not doing what the others want in this case. A pro-social aggression is intending to harm someone, but for the greater good. So this could be the superhero who is intending to cause harm to the villain, but to benefit society. And we can think of lots of different examples of that. And we can also think of examples of perhaps when the superhero goes wrong and when the police officer goes wrong and oversteps these lines and it's no longer for the benefit of society. Then it slides into what we call antisocial aggression. More so tying this to a villain, but it's possible that anyone can do this. And so this is when you're committing harm to a person, and by committing that harm to the person, you are detrimenting and hurting society as a whole. So that would be antisocial aggression. Now for dichotomy 4, we're talking less about your moral position and more about your physical position in an aggressive altercation. And this has to do with whether you're on the attack or whether you're on the defense. Perhaps you did fall into an aggressive encounter, and perhaps you did throw fists, and you did intend to cause harm, yet you intended to cause harm because it was out of self-defense. Well, that would be the defensive. Imagine, you're just going to your car late at night and someone tries to steal your car, and you weren't originally on the attack, you're just defending yourself and your car. So that would be the defensive stance versus the person who approached you, they're very much on the attack. And so there is the difference there between the attacker and the defender. Sometimes it gets a little bit blurry because sometimes people would argue that perhaps the defender's not really trying to harm them, they're just trying to deflect them. And then is that aggressive or is it not? Sometimes if you're defending, you're just trying to cause minimal harm, or you're trying to do equal power back to them. So that would still be considered aggressive. So that's dichotomy 4. And so our last dichotomy, dichotomy 5 here in physical aggression intentions, is the catalyst. Is it a case of proactive or reactive aggression? And so by proactive, what we really mean is, were you kind of initiating things? Were you the thing that caused it in motion? We can see here that if you are the proactive person in here, if you were the catalyst that caused the aggressive thing to happen, then there could be a lot of times where you would be the attacker. And when you're reactive, there could be a lot of times that you were the defender. So we could see some overlaps between dichotomy 4 and dichotomy 5, but there could also be exceptions to this. Although you may be reactive, you might turn out that you are not just defending yourself anymore, you are reacting and you want to take it up a notch, so in which case you could be the attacker as well. So when we think about catalyst, it thinks about where did things start in this chain of command? How did this all get running? It might have been a very calm encounter and then it escalated. What was the catalyst that caused it to escalate? Or maybe it was never calm. So what's the catalyst that caused this to start and caused these two components to collide? And so that could really be the difference. Of course, I just want to acknowledge that sometimes in this reactive type of aggression, you might just be reacting to yourself. You might be reacting to the fact that you lost a video game, so you throw the controller across the room, and there was no other person in there being proactive. So a lot of times when we're reactive amongst ourselves, or you stub your toe or something of that nature, that could also happen. You could also have proactive when you're alone and you just have this desire to cause arson to someone, let's say. So you proactively initiated an act of arson. That could also happen, of course. And so that was a lot of different components of the intentions of physical aggression, 10 different components in fact. And so there can be a lot of different things happening behind the scenes.